Houston Real Estate Radio starts right now.
Thanks for tuning in to Houston Real Estate Radio this Sunday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. We are here in the RREA.com studio, and I've got Mike Brubaker here with me. We've heard him before on the show. He has Brubaker and Associates. He is an appraiser, and he talks to a lot of realtors. His company's appraised a lot of houses. So we want to know what is going on in the appraisal industry. We hear good things, we hear bad things. What do you think?
You know, it's busy. It's a market unlike any we've had in the past. It's very, very challenging. It's definitely a seller's market. Mm-hmm. And for an awful lot of Houstonians and an awful lot of buyers, we have been used to it being a buyer's market for so long. And, you know, in a buyer's market, the buyer's in charge. He can take his pile of money is very, very portable. He can pick it up and move it to another house if he doesn't like the deal he's getting. But in today's market, the seller holds all the marbles. We hear all kinds of stories of property listed on Wednesday, 45 showings over the weekend. Monday, the realtor walks in. She's got 18 offers, 5 of them over list price, and she's picking which buyer she wants to work with. So right now, it's definitely a seller's market.
Now, what do you think about home staging? Because we just, a lot of our realtors just did a course on home staging, so we'd have the home staging designation, and we do recommend our sellers to get the home staged. And, you know, the sellers usually have to put a little money behind that. It's not just rearranging things. Sometimes there's some money involved, and if they're going to pay money, then they want to get more for the house. And in some markets, you know, you can get more for the house when it's staged. But I believe in our market, the better it's staged, the faster it sells. But I don't know that it necessarily sells for more money. What do you think?
You know, I think that people are not very creative. Most of us can't walk into an empty home and see furnishings and see how we're going to live in it. And empty rooms look smaller than furnished rooms.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I'm a fan of home staging. I think it works both in terms of shorter marketing times. Of course, in today's market, if it's on the market longer than 2 weeks, there's something wrong with it anyway. But and I think it does actually create higher sale prices. I think people look at it, they see it, it feels like home to them. Whereas if the next home they're looking at is vacant, that one that's staged has a huge advantage.
All right. And what's going on with the appraisals as far as, are you seeing homes appraising at contract price, or are you seeing a lot that don't come in right at value?
You know, I was just in front of a room full of realtors. There was probably about 80 folks in the room. And I asked them the question, how many of y'all said, everybody raise your hands, that have had an appraisal for mortgage financing come in at a price or a value less than contract price? And about 50 to 60% of the hands went up. And I sort of understand that. What that's telling me, and what we all know somewhat intuitively, is appraisers tend to be behind the ball with respect to valuations. Mm-hmm. Real estate's a dynamic market. Right now, our property values are increasing. They're appreciating at a very, very rapid rate. And a lot of us, you just can't keep up. We're looking at comparable sales that occurred a few months ago. So I think many of our appraisals right now are reflecting what the value of the property would have been 2 or 3 months ago, mm-hmm. not necessarily today.
Well, and that's the thing. Realtors and sellers are looking forward at where this is going and seeing that this home is worth a lot because of that demand for housing. Appraisers are looking in the past at what's previously sold. So, you know, sometimes it's hard to get to that perfect price for financing.
Yes. And my attitude really is, and again, appraisers are going to be behind the curve. If the appraisal comes in low for mortgage financing, and in today's market, I'm kind of fond of saying, you know, it's a seller's market. If the buyer's appraisal comes in at less than contract price, if I'm the seller, what that tells me is that buyer has a financing problem. He's got like 48 hours to cure that, or I'm going to sell it to the next buyer for more next week. Now, we'll tell you, it sounds a little bit harsh, but when I talk to my appraiser friends that are in other markets that have rapidly appreciating prices and values, and we see that in the rebound states, California, Florida, where property values hit the bottom and now they're bouncing off the bottom and increasing rapidly. And I asked them, I said, so how are you guys keeping up with the values? And the answer comes back is we're not. We're not able to track how fast these values are appreciating. And so the question becomes, well, how are the buyers, how are they buying real estate? They're putting in cash for the difference.
So we know there's a lot of cash buyers out there right now. And generally speaking, with a cash deal, you don't have to have an appraisal. But I always recommend it just as a kind of a check and balance kind of thing. Make sure that the value's there. So do you recommend that as well?
I do. And we do an awful lot of those. With a cash buyer, and a lot of our buyers are coming in from foreign markets, and they really don't know what the Houston market is like. And if you're paying cash and you've got no other device to tell you that you're not paying too much, then an appraisal is relatively cheap insurance to make sure you're not overpaying.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me, as far as months go, January through December, is there a best time of year to get an appraisal?
Now, there's a few tricks.
Okay, let's talk about those. Yeah. We like tricks.
Yeah. If you understand seasonality of real estate, and this is where I tend to draw in the air, and unfortunately on the radio that doesn't work. But prices tend to reflect demand. We tend to have the lowest demand in the cold, wet winter months. November, December, January, February. It's holidays. There's not a lot of incentive to move. Not a lot of folks, they're not moving because of schools or something. They're waiting for summer. So property values and sales prices tend to bottom out on an annual basis, and then they start to pick back up during the spring, and they peak during the summer markets. So June and July tend to be our highest price and it's just demand. We have greater demand for the homes that are available. So if I'm needing an appraisal to refinance and I need the highest value possible,
because there's a lot of people out there right now refinancing,
and and some of them may well be upside down because they bought, and who knows what happened with some of the mortgages. But if they need the highest value possible, make loan application around August or September, because as the appraiser, my comparable sales are going to be June and July and August. They're going to be the high sales. If you're making application, let's say in March, well, my comparable sales are those very, very low winter sales. So
right now, going into September, this is when you can get the most value for your house and get the best appraisal, right?
Typically, yes.
Less demand, because a lot of people have already purchased who want to purchase over the summer, but you can get a really good price on your house when you get the contract.
Yep. Now, this seasonality thing might be stretched a little bit in Houston. The last numbers I saw from the Texas Employment Commission were about 98,000 jobs created in the last 12 months. When you're creating that many jobs and we're not building that many homes, the demand is still going to increase. So we may not see that level of seasonality that we've seen in the past. And I know your studios, we're sitting up here off of Louetta and I-485. Exxon's building their huge facility.
Less than 5 miles away.
Yes. And I drove by there the other day, and I had passengers with me, and I said, count the cranes. And, I got a variety of numbers because you're moving, but there's like a dozen cranes out there.
Oh, yeah. It's a big project.
It's a big project. And, Exxon's bringing in, I don't know what their numbers are.
I saw a T-shirt the other day of a guy, I guess, who had worked out there. His T-shirt said whatever company it was has moved over so many square inches of dirt. It was just a crazy number. I don't remember what the number was, but I just remember I was looking at that going, wow, that's crazy. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of zeros.
Yeah, it was
a
interesting.
lot of zeros.
But it was really interesting. But that was kind of their marketing. Their T-shirt was their marketing for their company. It was interesting. So sometimes we've got about a minute or two left, and I want to talk about sellers because sometimes you'll get sellers who want to do everything before the sale. Okay, they want to get it. They want to get the home staged. They want to get the inspector out there to make sure everything looks good, working good, everything's good to go. Get the heating and air checked, and they want to get the appraisal. What would you say to those sellers? Because I'm always discouraging that. You let us hear from your point of view.
As a guy that's going to put a couple of kids through college, I'd like to tell everybody order an awful lot of appraisals. I don't care if you're buying or selling.
One before
or
you sell, one after you sell.
As often as you need. Get one every year just to see where your value is. But the reality is I'm not a fan of appraisals for sellers. And let's go back to in a market like today where the prices are appreciating so rapidly due to the great demand, and we're creating more jobs, that's going to continue for quite some time. Appraisers do tend to be behind the curve on value, and I think there's a good chance, and especially if you look at the seasonality with the appraisers, and unless you're very, very sophisticated and know the best appraisers and how to review appraisals. The reality is you send 10 appraisers to a seller's house, you're going to get 10 different values, and you're going to get 10 different living areas. And that's something that a lot of lay folks do not know. They tend to look at the appraised value as if it were a divine value, as if God came down and said, this is what it's worth.
Because that's how the lenders look at it.
That's exactly how the lenders look at it. And when they make me king of lending, I'm going to fix all that.
I hope you do.
Because it's just not that precise.
Right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't spend my money on it.
I'd really like to have a contract in front of the appraiser so that they know what our goal is.
Yes.
It doesn't mean they're going to appraise it wrong based on that number, but at least it lets them know what the demand, at least what the buyer feels is fair market value for the house.
Well, and that's exactly it. It tells the appraiser, if nothing else, what that buyer's willing to pay at that moment and what that seller's willing to accept at that moment. And again, we all like to think we're great negotiators. The sellers want to think that they negotiated the best possible price, and the buyers want to think they negotiated the lowest possible price. And oddly enough, appraisers, once that sale closes, it becomes a comparable sale.
Right.
And we tend to, and particularly underwriters, tend to look at that sale and that sale price, again, as if it were divined by God. And the reality is all that contract price means is what that buyer was willing to pay on that day and what that seller was willing to accept on that day. And, you take 3, 4, 5, 6 of those, and you can get a trend as to what the value should be.
Right.
But we're only close. We are not that good.
That's interesting. That's very interesting because not very many appraisers are going to agree to that.
Yeah, we'll set the phones ringing, I'm sure. I've got over 30 years experience. Trust me, I'm learning something new every day.
I do trust you. That's why I bring you on the show, because and when I get an appraisal from your company, I know it's squared away, and I like that.
And I appreciate that. We hear that story over and over.
All right, we'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio.